We've been friends a million years, so long I can't recall. From smart-ass teenage buddies to middle-aged dads here in the fall of life. Our wives still pretty grown-up kids, comfortable houses in good neighborhoods with good enough careers. I can't help it, brother, but I love you still, my right-wing friend.
Happy to have with me today's guest on the show, Will Kimbrough, who I first met way back in the day, or at least he came on my radar back in the bars in Tuscaloosa with Will and the Bushmen when he led that group. And then he's been part of Daddy, Willie Sugar Caps, the Red Dirt Boys, and has done myriad performing with other acts and recording with other acts and producing. He's about to have his solo album, which is 9th or 10th, which is this one right here, Spring Break. It's coming out in October, but I want to welcome to everyone Will Kimbrough.
It's good to be here.
It's definitely happy to have you here and happy to have you as part of the show, an all-time favorite, and we'll get into a lot of things over the course of this interview. But I want to back up just a little bit before we get into your new album and a few other topics. I want to talk a little bit about your last album, which was I Like It Down Here. And you had the song on that. We're both from Alabama. You're from South. I'm from North. And I found out about the lynching of Michael Donald through your song, Alabama. And I know you've probably told this story numerous times, and including at least once to me. But just tell our viewers just a little bit about the song Alabama and about that event and sort of what compelled you to write that song.
I will. Yeah, absolutely. In 1981, a young man named Michael Donald was just out running some errands, walking to the store and walking back home. He was, I think he was maybe 19 years old. He was kidnapped and forced into a car and taken out to the woods in Mobile County and murdered. And then he was hung up in a tree and on Herndon Avenue in Midtown Mobile, Alabama. And the crime was solved by the authorities, and two men were convicted, and they happened to be members of the Klan, members of the Ku Klux Klan. And so they were convicted, but the Klan, had no responsibility in a criminal hearing. Now, Morris Dees at the Southern Poverty Law Center knew that a civil suit was the only way to address the Klan itself. So he convinced Michael's mother to file a civil suit against the Ku Klux Klan, and he got one of the convicted murderers to say, the higher ups at the Klan in Northport, Alabama, where they had a 7,000 square foot office building at the time. This is 1981, not 1941, not 1861. And they won the lawsuit, but it took years. And so I knew about the lynching. I knew about the story, but there's a great book called The Lynching, and it's by a writer named Lawrence Leamer. And I read it just in the months leading up to when I wrote the song. And I knew I had to write a song that told the story, and I didn't quite know how to do it. It's such a heavy story, and I will say this, it doesn't have a happy ending. There's no happy ending to someone's life being snuffed out for no reason other than the color of their skin. There's nothing but tragedy. But the bravery of his mother and the resilience of her to live out that thing that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. always said, which was the arc of the moral universe is long. But, he always believed that you would find the good morality somewhere out there. It might take a lot longer, it might take several people's lifetimes. And in this case, Michael died, but his mother had the strength to go through this 5-year lawsuit, which was finally won. It bankrupted the Klan. So so I put that in a 4-minute song. Mm-hmm. And I try my best not to put anything about what I think about anything, but just from the point of view of an imaginary ghost of Michael Donald speaking and just telling his story, and his mother's story. And so that's the song.
Well, thanks for recounting that. And that song is from I Like It Down Here, which was one of my personal favorite albums of 2019. It came out in April of 2019. So if any of you have not heard that yet, hopefully you got it last year, but take a listen, or even better than that, buy it.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, Tim, let me interject one thing here.
Yeah.
My special guest vocalist on that song was Shemekia Copeland. Mm-hmm. And she's a great singer. A lot of people call her the Queen of the Blues. And I produced her last album, but also her upcoming album, which is going to be released the same day as mine, October 23rd. And this album is called Uncivil War. And I produced it as well and played on it. And it has some powerful songs on it as well that I helped write. One of them is the title track, Uncivil War, which has already been released as a single, and it's got Jerry Douglas and Sam Bush on there, and also the Orphan Brigade singing on there, and powerful song about our country right now. And also the lead off track on the album is called Clotilda's on Fire, which is the story of the last ship bringing in Africans to America to be enslaved. Right. And that boat was found recently in the Delta down by Mobile.
Right.
And so we wrote another song about Alabama history, and this time we got Jason Isbell playing guitar, and so it's going to be cool. I'm excited about. I don't want to take anything away from my own record I'm promoting, but I'm real excited about Shemekia's record, and she's got some really wonderful. I'm glad we got to write the Clotilda song for Shemekia to sing, right, because what a powerful voice, and to have somebody who, has lived African American in America, right, to sing that, to put her stamp on that song is very powerful. And of course Jason plays ridiculous guitar on there, so right, it's a Alabama collaboration with Queen of the Blues.
Yeah. Album. So tell me a little bit about how kind of world events led to this acoustic album.
Well, I was in Australia in February and doing a solo tour. My wife was with me. We were having a great time. We were, for once, getting to play a show and then have a few days off and actually go see stuff and spend days seeing things. So we were on the south coast of Australia, just having the greatest time. We knew this thing called, coronavirus, COVID-19 was floating around out there, and but it wasn't shutting anything down yet. So we're carrying on with the tour. And then one day we flew from Melbourne to Sydney, Australia, to play a festival that day north of Sydney in the Blue Mountains, and everything got canceled. Like my show that day, they were like, "Festival's canceled. Festival today is canceled today." And that rarely happens. They usually at least give you a day or two.
Right.
And the first shows on the front end had been canceled by fires there, the brush fires in Australia. So we still had a great time, and the shows were great. Festivals were great. People liked what I do, and we had a wonderful time. And beautiful country, wonderful people, koalas.
That's right.
Everywhere. And but we found ourselves in the Sydney airport with no gigs, and thought, well, maybe we should go back to Sydney and stay with our friends and figure out what to do. And then we got a text from our youngest daughter who said, well, I'm being sent, it's middle of spring break, University of Tennessee. I'm getting basically sent home for the rest of the year. So we're like, okay, we got to go home. So we went to the Qantas counter. 3 hours later, we were on a plane to Dallas and on to Nashville. I got home and everything was canceled. All work's canceled. And so I just saw it as an opportunity to just go out in the studio and occupy myself while I sort of had put feelers out for work and decided what I could do next to make a living sign up for a PPP, all that stuff everybody does during this time. So I started recording songs. So the bulk of the songs in this album are songs I co-wrote with other artists, and the songs were on their albums, and either never were on mine, or I always wanted to do an acoustic version. So I started recording those songs and just having fun with it. I'll record this song I wrote with Adrian Young. I'll record this song I wrote with Todd Snyder, etc. And then the new songs started to come. And All Fall Down was written with my friend Rich McCulley, who's a California boy, and he just recently moved to El Paso. He's lived in Fresno, San Francisco, and Los Angeles his whole life, and then he moved to El Paso to be where his son and his son's mother are. And he moved there right at the beginning of the shutdown. So he basically moved from Los Angeles to El Paso, and he doesn't know anybody yet because he hasn't been able to go meet new friends. So he's just with his son, and his son's mother comes in and out delivering the son and picking him up. And so he's been wanting to write. So we started writing that. And he just said that one day. He said, something in the air don't feel right, something don't feel like it should. And I said, well, that's the first two lines of our next song. And we decided to do the old, divided we stand, united we stand, divided we fall. And so we wrote All Fall Down, and I really liked it. And I started playing shows on my porch and started playing it, and people really liked it. So I figured, well, I've got these, 9 songs that I've recorded, and then this new song, All Fall Down, that's 10. I'm like, man, I'm making a record here, potentially. And so then I wrote Digging a Ditch with a Spoon with the great Milton Brown, who's a great old Nashville songwriter. He was Jimmy Buffett's mentor in Mobile, the first guy to take Buffett to Nashville and introduce him to Buzz Cason. So, but also wrote Every Which Way But Loose, for that Clint Eastwood movie, trucking movie, and many other songs. But he's a great writer, and he was a dear friend of my father's, and so I always wanted to write with Milton. Anyway, and then John Prine, got sick and passed away, and it just kind of blew me away. Of course, like everybody else that pays any attention to good music, was just blown away by a world without John Prine. And so I wrote that song the day after he passed, and or maybe even that night. But I was just doing like I usually do, which is write from life. I wrote Alabama about Michael Donald because I was spending a lot of time in Mobile, and I was reading that book in Midtown Mobile, walking past the street that used to be called Herndon Avenue, now called Michael Donald, at Michael Donald Avenue. And so William Faulkner says, write what you know. So I try to write about what I see and describe it, and then maybe put in a little bit about what I feel about it, if it's that kind of a song. So that's how it came about. And pretty soon that I've always wanted to make a true solo record where you just basically record yourself and don't overdub anything on it.
Right.
And if your listeners are wondering, well, why the hell would you want to do that? But I love that kind of record. I love Woody Guthrie records, early Bob Dylan records, Nick Drake records, Robert Johnson, Skip James, Mississippi John Hurt, Son House,
right,
Jimmy Rogers, John Lee Hooker, Hank Williams solo, that stuff they've put out in the last 20 years or so of his demos. Right. There's something wonderful about that. So any other time but now, there would be a sort of a pushback from the distributor or the publicist or the radio promoter saying, well, we can't really promote that. How are you going to promote that?
Right.
And so now, since all you can do is promote it this way, or playing online, or very few shows. I've actually played one ticketed live show, and I'm going to play one this weekend, but that's just 2 shows in 7 months. I've been on the road 200 days a year for 35 years. Right. So it's totally different, and I can handle it. I mean, I like being home and writing and recording, and I miss touring and playing, and mainly just seeing people, meeting people and seeing people. But I just saw an opportunity to do a true solo kind of folk record and so I just did it, you know, and this was the time to do it. And actually now in the meantime, I've written a whole album of like songs for this time, and I gotta wonder, what do you do with them? We all hope this time will be over soon, and what do you do with them then? And so I don't know, maybe there'll be like a Bandcamp digital, you know, release or something of some more songs, because you gotta, I mean, but I'll say this, whatever songs are for, one thing they're for personally for me is just it's like it's therapeutic. So I, you know, it's a good thing to get to express yourself, and so I got to do it, and then it's also my job to put it out there and play it for people. So then My Right Wing Friend got released, and so that's a song about the atmosphere in the country, but it's very personal because it's literally about one of my old friends, and we're totally opposite politically, but we're still really good friends. And the way we have to live to stay friends is I can't read his Twitter and respond to that. I have to communicate with him personally. And it's a lesson to me about that whole thing. So every time I'm like reading something online and able to comment, like, you know, social media, Twitter, Facebook, I try to hold myself back because remember that I believe what I believe. If I want to have a conversation with somebody that I know, then I can pick up the phone. And even just texting is better than commenting back and forth on Twitter or Facebook if it's not a friendly conversation. And also a friendly conversation on Twitter or Facebook can turn unfriendly so fast now, because I think I remember when the Abu Ghraib incident happened in the Iraq War, and they had a talking head, but it was a retired general, and the retired general said, you know, real discipline is what you do when nobody's looking. And so I think the internet allows us all to sort of be that person late at night, like, well, now I can just say whatever's in my brain and nobody can do anything about it. And nobody can punch me in the face if I offend them. You know, we're not in a bar room having a fight. We're just sort of, I don't know, sending little nasty smoke signals to each other. And I'm guilty of it too. So that song is literally about, for one thing, it's a love song to friendship. And it does trigger people, but that's cool. I mean, you know, it triggers people, and I always have to say, hey, did you listen to the song or did you just look at the title? And then a social media fight ensues. But anyway,
of course.
But I wrote it. It's a love song to my friend who I have complete and utter opposite views, except for some things. You know, and this is a friend who will post the most heinous, in my mind, you know, backward thinking stuff, and then as soon as I'm about to just block him all around, you know, he'll call me up and we'll talk about Miles Davis for 2 hours. Or, you know, Sly and the Family Stone, that record called Fresh, or just something that I just love. And I don't think he's trying to win back favor. I think he's genuinely a lover of music and culture and open-minded about that. And then other stuff, he's just a stone cold conservative somewhere to the right of Attila the Hun. But that's I have one of my father's, I guess my cousin too, but she would be like 120 now if she was alive, but they had a big political fight back in the 80s, and she described herself as somewhere to the right of Attila the Hun. So I figured you got to take that as a gift. It's going to end up in a song here soon.
Remember when you paged in Congress, Washington, D.C. My band would come and play, and we'd crash at your place for free. Just drunken knuckleheads pretending we were grown-up men. Now we're slower, fatter versions of the boys we were back then. I love you and I always will, my right-wing friend.
Hey, I want to thank Will Kimbrough for being my guest in this episode of Freedom Sings, Musicians Talk Activism and Social Change. Let me remind you that Will's new album, Spring Break, releases October 23rd. And for the first time in this series, I decided to break up this interview into two parts. I've loved Will's music for a very long time, and we had a great conversation. So rather than cut half of it, you can see the rest of the interview next week. So thanks again to Will, and I invite you to hear more from Will on the next episode of Freedom Sings, Musicians Talk Activism and Social Change.